everyone. Welcome back to today's build. I'll be your guide in this wonderful game we all love. Let's get started. Today's deck is a personal deck of mine, Jodah the Unifier. Specifically though, today I want to talk about a lot of the mistakes that people might make when building a Jodah deck. Jodah is a 5/5, or really a 6/6, human wizard that reads, legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, and shuffle the rest onto the bottom of your library. That's a lot of text, but he might as well read, legendary spells you cast from your hand have Cascade for legends. However, there is one colossal difference that a lot of people miss when they read this card. See, back in Zendikar Rising, when MDFCs first came out, and later in Strixhaven, Wizards had a problem. Cascade stops you when you find a card with lesser mana value, but you can still cast it on its back side for free even if it costs more. So they rewrote the comprehensive rules for Cascade to read, you may cast it without paying its mana cost if its mana value is less than this spell's mana value. Jodah, however, does not have this text, which means that we can use Jodah's ability to Cascade into the 2-drop Valki, but play it as the 7-mana Tybalt, or the 3-mana Asika into the 5-mana Prismatic Bridge. But we're not going to do that. See, Jodah's second ability triggers off of any legendary spell, so we could definitely put it in some other permanence, but Jodah's first ability cares only about legendary creatures. That means if we make it a dedicated legendary creatures deck, we can get twice as much synergy out of our cards. Unlike other Cascade decks like the Maelstrom Wanderer or Yidris, because Jodah specifically cascades for legends, we have a lot more control over what he'll cascade into, much like a Cody deck. Also, like how Henzi's ability gets proportionally more value when we're casting the smallest thing his ability applies to, since Cascade hits only spells of lesser mana value, we're getting the most value off of that trigger when we hit a spell that costs exactly 1 less than the original. A lot of the pieces that you'd want in a Jodah also fall in the range of 3 to 5 mana, so we have to make a choice. Either build a 3 and 4 mana Legends Jodah deck, or a 4 and 5 mana Legends Jodah deck. This means that we're not going to play cards like Itali, which show up in 20% of Jodah decks, or Nyambi in 22%, or Jensen in 24%, or Maelstrom Wanderer in 24%, Kenrith in 29%, or Rograk in 32%, or Elish Norn in 18% of decks. And above all, absolutely no Eldrazi. Why are things like Avacyn or Piru in this deck? Stop building Jodah with high mana values. Start building him with high value. We'll start with ramp. Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, and Market Festival all ramp and can be used the turn they come down. We follow that up with 1-mana mana dorks, like Birds of Paradise, Noble and Ignoble Hierarch, though Avacyn's Pilgrim, Elves of Deep Shadow, and Arbor Elf can substitute on a budget. We're also running Skyshroud Claim and Nature's Lore to search for a suite of triumphs, specifically though, only triumphs that have the Forest subtype. Again, on a budget you can substitute these for other lands. One thing to keep in mind is that even though we're filling our deck with legendary creatures, we still need to pack some efficient removal and draw spells attached to non-creature sources. The top card is Urza's Ruinous Blast, which of course is in our deck, but we're also running Urtai Resurrected, Lagrella the Magpie, and Lorn of the Third Path, which conform to our 4 and 3 mana restrictions. For card draw, we're packing Vega the Watcher, Joriane Ruin Diver, and the #1 best card in our deck, Shannon Sleeper Scourge. Shannon is great because he can also refill our hand with card draw, but also gives our team the evasion they need to close out the game. We're also running Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia, Grand Warlord Radha, Kethis the Hidden Hand, and Umori the Collector to help us out on mana. Instead of Arvad the Cursed, we're running King Darian the 48th and Judith the Scourge Diva to fit our 3 and 4 mana criteria. And because our commander already does a great job of buffing our board, we're going to give more attention to cards like Jetmir and Torre d'Avenant that help our board push through. Next, we're going to try to give our board haste with cards like Chainer, Nightmare Adept, Alana and Elena, Partners, Samut Tyrant Smasher, and Temur Ascendancy. Lastly, we're protecting our board with Autumn's Veil, Ratadrapic of Urborg, Tishar, and Obscura Charm. We have enough humans in the deck to also justify cards like General's Enforcer and Path of Ancestry. Together, Kethis, Tishar, and Chainer help rescue our fallen creatures. Since they're here, we probably don't need something as hefty as Primeval's Rebirth in the mix, and instead we use that slot for our only 2-drop, Thalia, as well as Redain and Audric. With a suite of Signets, and of course my favorite Pentad Prism, we smooth out our curves while ramping to 7 before playing our commander. Of course, the timing may depend on the board at the time, but in a vacuum it's best that we have access to 7 mana when we play Jodah. One reason being that we may want to hold up 2 mana to hold off removal or counterspells directed at our commander. The second is that if we're making our land drops, we can untap with 8 mana and cast 2 4-drops from our hand, potentially even with haste. This deck is deceptively powerful. Its power is not in its visible board state, but in its mana presence. With enough mana, it consistently goes from 0 to lethal in a single turn without going infinite, but it doesn't do so in a small time frame. So we definitely don't live in the 9 to 10 range. We're not winning before turn 6. Instead, the average Jodah deck is probably close to a 6, at least as it's listed on EDH Rec. A budget version of this presentation of the deck is a strong 7, and the deck, as stated, is a solid 8 with no budget. If you liked this video, leave a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching!